Chapter 1 Dark Origins. In a forgotten corner of the galaxy, on a lonely world called Medrius, something unnatural took shape. The year was roughly 5000 BBY, and this planet tucked at the edge of Sith space was soaked in dark-side energy. It flowed through the rocks like venom, and it birthed something that should never have existed. Medrius was ruled by a Sith Lord named Darth during a brief affair with a local woman. An affair he would barely remember, he unknowingly set in motion the rise of the galaxy's greatest horror. The child born of that union was named Tenebrae. From the moment he entered the world, there was an unease around him. Animals shied away in terror, children avoided him. Without knowing why, his mother, who should have held him with warmth, felt only dread when she looked into his eyes. 6 years old, most children are learning to read and dream of play. Tenebrae was learning how to kill. His connection to the Force bloomed early, but not with peace or balance. It was violent, it was ravenous. The dark side called to him like a voice he had always known. When his stepfather discovered the truth that Tenebrae was the illegitimate child of Lord Darth, he lashed out, striking the boy's mother. In fury, that was his final act. With a single thought, Tenebrae snapped his neck. The sound of his spine breaking echoed through their home like dry wood cracking under pressure. But the boy was not done. The act did not bring peace, it brought hunger. Cold, calculating hunger. He turned on his mother next, not in a moment of rage, but with purpose. He blamed her for her lies for months. He tortured her systematically without mercy, feeding on her pain like a parasite. By the time she died, he felt only satisfaction. By the age of 6, he had crossed a threshold most beings never glimpse, and he kept walking further into the dark. Between the ages of 6 and 10, Tenebrae extended his reach beyond his ruined home. He moved into neighboring villages. He made his offer simple: submit or die. Those who knelt were made slaves. Those who resisted were made examples. Tenebrae did not hide his cruelty. He broadcast it. He would capture dissenters, bind them in the village square, and torture them for days. Their screams echoed across the hills while Tenebrae drank in their agony, growing stronger with every tear, every sob, every desperate plea. He did not care if they were men or women, elders or children. To him, pain was pain, and pain was power. Word spread like wildfire. A demon child had risen in the north, one who bent the Force to his will like a blade. People came, not always out of belief, but out of terror. Some were drawn to the power. Others simply wanted to survive it. By the time Tenebrae turned 10 years old, thousands had pledged themselves to him. They called him master, he called them tools. One village at a time his dominion spread. His forces would encircle a town and offer a single ultimatum: surrender everything or burn. Most chose life on their knees. By his 10th birthday, Tenebrae ruled the northern continent of Medrius, and at last his name reached the ears of his father. Lord Darth, intrigued, perhaps alarmed, Darth investigated the child personally. He expected an overambitious young Sith, something he could mold or destroy. He found something else entirely. Their confrontation was brief. Darth arrived in arrogance, a master Sith, facing a 10-year-old. He left shattered. His connection to the Force severed, his mind broken. Tenebrae did not just defeat him, he dismantled him, thought by thought, memory by memory, and then he killed him. With his father dead, others scrambled to claim the throne of Medrius. His half-brother Darth's legitimate heir chose the only path that made sense. He fled the planet, never to return. The Sith Lords who remained did not last long. They fell one after another, consumed by the rising force that no one understood. Tenebrae absorbed their armies, their territory, their fear. By age 13, he ruled all of Medrius, and he renamed it Nathema, a world that had once teemed with rival Sith now bowed to a teenager whose idea of leadership was terror and death. He had become an emperor not by birthright but by sheer unstoppable cruelty. His rise was not a series of battles, but an unfolding catastrophe. Bloodlines vanished, villages were erased. And through it all, the child tyrant never blinked. The dark side had not corrupted Tenebrae. It had found him, and in him it found something terrifyingly pure, a vessel not of ambition or ideology, but of hunger, limitless, patient hunger. He was no longer a boy, he was a beginning. And his story, whispered across centuries, was only just starting. Chapter 2: Immortality Ritual. The day the Force went silent at 13. Tenebrae was already Emperor of Nathema, but ruling a world was never his goal. He wanted to become something no one had ever been. Immortal, so he left his newly conquered planet and traveled to the old heart of the Sith. Zeost, it was the capital of the ancient Sith Empire, a world steeped in darkness and tradition there. He sought an audience with the most powerful Sith in the galaxy, Marka Rangos. Rangos was ancient, a legend. In his own time, no one approached him lightly, but when this teenage boy stepped into the throne room, the air changed. The dark side did not resist him, it welcomed him. Marka Rangos saw it immediately. This child was not merely ambitious, he radiated power, unexplainable, unnatural power, with a rare mix of awe and fear. Rangos granted him the title of Sith Lord. From that moment, Tenebrae ceased to be a name, he took on a new one. Vitiated boy returned to Nathema, not to celebrate, but to disappear. For nearly a century, Lord Vitiate vanished from galactic affairs, while other Sith Lords bled themselves dry in endless wars and petty betrayals. He waited deep in isolation, building something darker than anyone could imagine on the very ground where he had tortured his mother. He built a grand fortress. He turned the world into a temple of silence, a place of focus, a place to prepare young Sith came, drawn by rumors, but this was not the academy they expected. Vitiate taught no wild rage, no reckless fury. He taught patience, precision, the art of control. Ever Sith screamed their power, he whispered his, and the galaxy forgot him then. War came. The great hyperspace war erupted between the Sith Empire and the Galactic Republic Sith. Lords rose and fell, fleets burned, the galaxy screamed. But not Vitiate. He watched in silence. Others called him coward, a hermit, a scholar, obsessed with dusty relics. But while they died for glory, Vitiate was studying, waiting when the war ended in disaster. For the Sith, Vitiate remained untouched. Entire empires had crumbled. The Republic hunted Sith survivors like animals now. They were desperate, and desperation made them easy. Vitiate emerged with a single message he promised: salvation, a ritual, one that would gather the strength of the dark side and strike back at the Jedi. He called upon every surviving Sith Lord, those who had lost homes, legacies, families. He told them unity was their only hope. They listened. 8,000 Sith Lords answered his call. They came to Nathema from every corner of the broken empire, carrying ancient bloodlines and forgotten power. They thought they were building a weapon. Instead, they were walking into a tomb. Vitiate welcomed them with warmth and ceremony. He spoke of revenge, of legacy, of reclaiming the galaxy. He spoke lies wrapped in truth, and they believed. The ritual began. And in a single moment, everything changed. The Force screamed, then went silent. Vitiate dropped the mask. He unleashed his full power like a tidal wave, crushing the wills of all 8,000 Sith simultaneously. Their minds shattered, their bodies frozen. For 10 days the planet died. The dark side devoured everything: trees, grass, insects, even the air felt empty. Animals dropped dead where they stood. The once mighty Sith Lords became unwilling sacrifices. Their life force flowed into Vitiate like rivers into a sea. Thousands of years of knowledge, strength, hatred, and experience absorbed piece by piece when it was Over nothing remained, Nathema became void, a planet without the Force. A world where nothing could grow, not a flower, not a breath, only Vitiate remained, but he was no longer a man, not even a Sith. He had become something new, a being without beginning or end, a being with no name, just a title, the Emperor. He did not need anything else. He stood on a dead world, surrounded by 8,000 corpses, and he felt only satisfaction. He erased the truth with a lie. Told the galaxy the Jedi had destroyed. Nathema blamed them for what he had done, and the survivors believed it. Hatred is easy to feed, and Vitiate's new Empire would feast on it. For centuries he had done the impossible, achieved true immortality through the mass murder of an entire world. But for the Emperor this was only the beginning. Chapter 3: Hidden Empire, the silence between stars. After murdering an entire world to gain immortality, the Sith Emperor disappeared. He had everything he needed now, power beyond comprehension. A lifeless world as his throne, and the dark side whispering at his fingertips, but he wanted more. The Sith were broken, hunted, scattered. So the Emperor gathered what remained of them and offered a final choice. Follow me into the unknown, or face extinction at the hands of the Jedi. Most chose exile, and so began the great Sith exodus, a mass departure into uncharted space. They left behind their temples, their empires, their blood-stained histories. Everything they had ever known. Abandoned. The Emperor promised salvation, and they believed him, but he was not leading them to safety. He was rebuilding them in his image. What followed was a 20-year voyage through darkness, not metaphor, but stars and void. The Emperor's fleet wandered the unknown regions, following routes only he could see. Hyperspace, jumps to nowhere, detours that led to dead systems, months of drifting in silence. Food ran low, hope faded on. Yet he never wavered. Each delay, each setback broke his followers just a little more, and each day they survived, they needed him a little more. He was not just their Emperor now, he was their faith, their purpose, their God. Finally, after decades of wandering, he led them to a forgotten world. Dramand Kars, a planet veiled in jungle and storm, saturated in ancient darkside energy. It pulsed like a living thing here. The Emperor made his promise. The old Sith Empire had died because it was divided and weak. But the new empire, his empire, would be stronger than anything the galaxy had ever known, and one day it would have revenge on the ruins of that world. A city rose, a monument of dark ambition. Kaz City. The Emperor walked among his people, at first visible, calm, unshakable. His presence quickened construction, and his words became scripture. But over time he withdrew. He stepped into the shadows, becoming legend, myth, and fear. He left the Dark Council to rule in his name 12 powerful Sith Lords tasked with administration, but they were not equals, they were his instruments. And behind them stood something even more terrifying. The hand of the Emperor, a secret group of agents bound to him through the Force itself. They were given extended lifespans, powers beyond reason, and one purpose: absolute obedience. They acted without question, without hesitation, without identity. Emperor also mastered a forbidden art, the voice. With this, he could transfer his consciousness into new hosts, male or female, human or alien. It did not matter. Wherever a voice stood, the Emperor was present, and when a host body burned out under the weight of his power, he simply moved. On over 3 centuries he cycled through dozens of vessels, while his original form remained untouched, unseen, unaging. His people worshipped him. They were taught from birth that their lives belonged to the Emperor. Death in his name was sacred. Schools taught history as scripture slogans became prayers. The Dark Temple in Kaz City, where storms never ceased, became the heart of ritual sacrifice. The Emperor's words shaped art, literature, music, and philosophy. Independent thought, faded orthodoxy consumed all, but beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Some on the Dark Council began to suspect the truth. that the Emperor did not plan to rule them forever. He planned to consume them. Darth Nihilus was the first to voice it quietly, carefully. She uncovered records of what happened on Nathema, of the ritual that silenced the Force. And she realized the Emperor was not building an empire, he was preparing for another extinction. More Sith joined her. In secret they whispered, in shadows built networks, pretended loyalty. They feared him, but they feared extinction more. Meanwhile, far from Dromund, caused the Emperor's true attention turned to something ancient, a fleet buried on a forgotten world called Zakul, a secret so old even time had lost it, an eternal fleet of thousands of automated warships crafted by creators who no longer existed. And on that same world he created a new identity. He shed his Sith name and became something else, a benevolent ruler, a father. He called himself Valkorion. Chapter 4 Mandalorian Wars, whispers that set the galaxy on fire. The Emperor had waited long enough. After centuries of building in silence, he was ready to test the Republic. He did not launch fleets. He did not raise armies. He simply whispered one voice in the right ear at the right time, and the galaxy began to burn. The target of his whispers was Mandalore, the ultimate leader of the Mandalorians, a proud people of warriors and conquest for generations. They had fought as mercenaries and raiders, but their hunger was growing. They needed a war worthy of their name, and the Emperor gave it to them. He sent a secret envoy, a pureblood Sith hand-picked, carrying a vision crafted by the Emperor himself. The vision was a lie, but it was beautiful. It showed Mandalore leading the greatest campaign in galactic history, his people rising as conquerors of the stars, the Republic trembling before them. The images ignited a fire in his heart. Over the months that followed, the Emperor's agent returned. Again and again, subtle words, guided dreams, hints of destiny whispered through the Force, and Mandalore believed he was not being manipulated, he was being chosen to. Years later, the flames leaped into reality. The Mandalorian Wars had begun without warning. Mandalorian forces struck from the Outer Rim. Planet after planet fell, cities burned, civilians were slaughtered. This was not conquest, this was devastation. They used nuclear bombardments, entire populations were wiped out. Old rules of war meant nothing. The Republic, softened by peace, was caught completely off guard, and the Jedi, they hesitated. To them, it was not a war of the Force, it was politics. They debated while worlds died. Just as the Emperor had planned for 16 years, the Republic bled. The Mandalorians claimed victory after victory, and still the true enemy remained unseen, watching as his test unfolded perfectly. But war has a way of creating heroes. A young Jedi Knight named Revan broke with the Jedi Council. He refused to sit in silence. He took command of the Republic's scattered forces, and with him came Malak, his closest friend, powerful in the Force and fiercely loyal. Together, they changed everything. Revan was brilliant, tactical, ruthless. He began reclaiming lost worlds, turning the tide of battle, forcing the Mandalorians to retreat. But Revan also noticed strange things, Sith artifacts on the battlefield, dark side energy where no Sith had fought, whispers in Mandalorian transmissions of a guiding hand. He began to suspect the war was not what it seemed. Then came the final blow, the Battle of Malachor. 5 Revan lured the Mandalorian forces to the planet. There his generals had prepared a super weapon, the mass shadow generator, a terrifying device that twisted gravity itself into a weapon. Revan faced Mandalore, the ultimate in single combat. He won, and then his general Mitra Surik, the future exile, activated the weapon. The gravity well tore apart entire fleets. It shattered Malachor's surface, turning it into a cursed scar across the galaxy. The war was over, but the damage had only begun. As Mandalore lay dying, his mind freed from the Emperor's influence, remembered the truth. This war had been a lie. The Mandalorians had been pawns used. By a Sith master hidden in the shadows, he told Revan with his final breath, and Revan listened. He realized the Republic had not faced its true enemy. Someone somewhere had planned all of this, and they were still waiting. The Emperor had gotten everything he wanted. The Republic was weakened, the Jedi were divided, and the perfect tools, Revan and Malak, had emerged from the fire, hardened, disillusioned, dangerous. Exactly what he needed for the next phase. The galaxy thought the war was over, but it had only been the opening move. Chapter 5. Revan and Malak, the fall beneath the throne. Jedi walked into darkness, convinced they were saving the galaxy. They came as heroes, they left as servants. So after the Mandalorian Wars ended, Revan could not let it rest. He remembered dying words, a whisper of something greater, something hidden, something ancient, pulling the strings from the shadows. The Republic thought it had one. But Revan knew better. The real enemy was still out there. He convinced his friend Malak to join him. Together they would go beyond the map, beyond the known. They would find this secret Sith master and end the threat before it grew. These were not ordinary Jedi. Revan was brilliant, visionary, bold. Malak was loyal, powerful, fearless. Together they had ended the Mandalorian Wars, and now they would end whatever lay beyond. They began with the clues they had gathered during the war. Fragments of maps, ancient inscriptions, echoes of Sith activity where none should be. It led them first to Dan, then to Korriban, and finally to a planet long lost to time, Nathema, the world where the Force had died. They had no way of knowing, but they were walking straight into a trap laid centuries earlier. The moment their boots touched the soil of Nathema, they felt it, the silence, not just lifeless, but empty, a world wounded. Even the air seemed to recoil from existence. The Force gone, they saw ruins, echoes of a ritual no one could understand, records that led to one place. Drummond caused the heart of the Emperor's hidden empire. They left their fleet behind and went in alone. Spies, not warriors, they wore disguises. They moved among the people. For months, they studied the Sith Empire from within, a new society, fanatical, disciplined, worshipping one man. And then, just as the Emperor planned, they were led to him. The doors of his citadel opened. They stepped into the throne room, believing they had the upper hand, believing they could strike quickly, kill him before he could react. It should have worked, but the Emperor had been waiting. He knew who they were, why they had come, and what they planned, and he had prepared. The moment they stood before him, he unleashed a mental assault, unlike anything they had ever experienced. The Force screamed. Their minds shattered in seconds. They were unmade and remade, shaped into weapons, not of the Jedi, but of the Emperor. Revan and Malak fell, not in battle, but in will. And when they rose again, they were no longer Jedi, they were Darth. Revan and Darth Malak, they retained their memories, their intelligence, their ambition. But now their loyalty belonged completely to the Emperor. They believed they were acting freely. They believed they were building something of their own, but every step, every decision served his vision. He had captured the Republic's greatest minds, drained their secrets, and repurposed them for Warfleet positions, Jedi vulnerabilities, political fractures. He now held them all, but he wanted more. The Emperor told Revan of a forgotten relic, the Starforge, a factory of ancient power built by the Rakata, capable of creating entire fleets, using dark side energy as fuel. He sent them to find it. They obeyed. They located it deep in the unknown regions, a massive orbiting forge that breathed starships into existence. With it, Revan and Malak could build an empire overnight. But something happened, something the Emperor did not expect. Away from his presence, Revan began to remember who he had been. The Starforge, fed by the dark side, strengthened his will and his independence. Slowly, quietly, he broke free, and Malak followed, but they did not return to the Jedi. They were no longer the people they had once been. The dark side had changed. Then Revan decided to use the Starforge for his own purposes, not to destroy the Republic, but to unify it through conquest, through power. In 3958 BBY, Revan and Malak turned on the Emperor. They declared a new Sith Empire, their empire. The Jedi Civil War had begun. For 2 years the galaxy bled. Revan and Malak used the same tactics they had learned in the Mandalorian Wars, but now amplified by the Starforge's endless armada. Jedi died by the thousands, many were turned. Many more simply vanished, but war breeds betrayal. Malak, hungry for power, turned on his master during a Jedi ambush. Revan was wounded and captured. His mind was shattered again, this time by the Jedi Council. They wiped his memories and rebuilt him, this time as a tool of the light. The reborn Revan hunted down his old friend, defeated Malak, destroyed the Starforge, and ended the war. The galaxy survived, but barely. And all the while, the Emperor had been watching from Dromond. He observed every move, every choice, every death, and he was pleased because, in Revan's betrayal, in Malak's fall, in the war's destruction, the Republic had been weakened, the Jedi fractured. The timing for invasion would have been perfect, but Revan's lingering presence still posed a threat. The Emperor knew if he wanted to rule unchallenged, Revan would need to be erased completely. Chapter 6: Revan's Revenge. The Jedi who fought Tenebrae was supposed to be gone. He had been broken, wiped clean, reprogrammed by the Jedi, turned from a Dark Lord into a savior. But the truth does not stay. Buried forever, little by little, the memories returned, not all at once, just fragments at first, flashes of pain, echoes of voices, and always a shadow, a presence, cold and eternal. The Sith Emperor Revan remembered what the Jedi refused to believe. The real enemy was still out there, still planning, still waiting, and so Revan made a choice the Jedi could not understand. He would go back alone, back into Sith space, back to face the being who had turned him into a weapon, and this time he would finish what he started. The Council tried to stop him. They called it suicide, but to Revan it was redemption. He assembled a quiet crew, his loyal astromech, T3M for Canderous. Ordo, the Mandalorian warrior he had once defeated, now chosen as the next Mandalorian. Revan never knew it, but forces were moving. Behind the curtain within the Sith Empire, seeds of rebellion were taking root. A Dark Council member named Darth had uncovered the truth of the ritual, the silence, the lie. She realized what others feared to imagine. The Emperor did not just want power, he wanted to consume everything. Even the Sith. She began gathering allies in secret, including one dangerous weapon. Lord Scourge, the Emperor's own enforcer, a man trained to kill in his master's name, but now questioning everything. When Revan re-entered Sith space, it was not the Emperor who stopped him, it was Nyrus and her conspirators. They captured him before he reached Dromond. Because they did not reveal his identity to the Emperor, they were not ready, not yet. For 3 years, Revan was held prisoner in the dark, tortured, questioned, stripped of power, but never of resolve. Scourge watched. At first he expected Revan to break, but the Jedi never screamed, never begged. Instead he spoke of the Emperor, of the truth behind the mask, of the death waiting for them all, and slowly Scourge began to believe. Meanwhile, Revan's allies were not idle. Mitra, Surik, the Jedi exile and former general from the Mandalorian Wars followed his trail. She tracked him through the void, through the unknown regions, until she reached Sith space. There she found Canderous, also searching, also loyal, and together they found Scourge, who had finally made his decision. He would betray the Emperor. Together, the three of them formed an impossible alliance, to Jedi and a Sith, united by one mission, to kill the Immortal Emperor. Scourge played his role to perfection. He alerted the Emperor of a supposed plot, carefully omitting his own involvement. In response, the Emperor summoned much of the Dark Council to his throne room and massacred them loyalists, traitors, it did not matter. Their screams echoed through the citadel and, in the chaos Revan was freed he had already killed. Nyris, in an earlier escape attempt, burned her to ash with her own lightning. Now, with Mitra and Scourge at his side, he made his way toward the Emperor's chamber. They had one chance, one window. And the moment they stepped through the doors, history changed. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Revan wielding both light and dark, striking with impossible precision. For a moment he overwhelmed the Emperor. He staggered the unshakable, but power alone is not destiny, and Scourge saw something. A vision of the future, perfect clarity, and in that vision, Revan did not kill the Emperor. Nor did Metra. Someone else with a Jedi, not yet born. A hero of Tython's Corge knew what he had to do. In silence, he turned his blade and stabbed Metra through the back. She fell without a sound. Screamed, the pain shattered his focus, and in that one breath of hesitation, the Emperor struck back. Lightning filled the chamber. Revan collapsed, broken, bleeding. The Emperor tested Scourge, demanding he finish the job. Scourge raised his saber and paused. The Emperor smiled. He believed the trap had worked, that Scourge had played the long game, and so he spared Revan. Imprisoned him in stasis aboard a secret station known as the Maelstrom, a living battery kept unconscious, drained when needed, fed upon for strength. There Revan remained for 300 years. But even in sleep, Revan was not silent. His mind remained linked to the Emperor's, and through that link, Revan whispered, caution, doubt, patience. The Emperor's war was delayed by 3 centuries, time enough for the Republic to rebuild, time enough for destiny to catch up. Revan had saved the galaxy twice, once by ending a war, and again by sacrificing his freedom, waiting, whispering, preparing, because the true battle was still to come. Chapter 7, Great Galactic War. When shadows took shape, the galaxy had forgotten the Sith. It had been over 1,000 years since their empire fell. The Jedi believed them extinct, the Republic believed they were safe, but the Sith had not been idle. They had been watching, waiting, building, and now the time had come without warning. The skies split open, massive. Sith fleets dropped from hyperspace into dozens of systems at once, entire star systems that had known only peace for generations, suddenly found themselves under siege. This was no random assault, this was a return. Coordinated, merciless, absolute. Great Galactic War had begun. The Emperor had waited centuries for this moment. His armadas were unlike anything the Republic had ever faced. Vast fleets supported by legions of Sith warriors, endless waves of soldiers bred for war, raised in darkness. They struck fast and deep, using secret hyperspace routes to bypass Republic defenses and strike at their hearts. Their first target was Korriban, once the holy world of the Sith, now occupied by Jedi scholars and Republic forces. The Sith struck like lightning. The garrison never stood a chance. Korriban was reclaimed in a single night. The message was clear: the Sith had returned, and they would take back everything. The Republic reeled, its fleets were unprepared, its people caught in disbelief. The Jedi struggled to respond, scattered and divided. Their complacency had cost them dearly. The war raged across the stars for 28 years. The Sith claimed early victories, pushing deep into the core worlds. Their tactics were brutal, honed by centuries of hidden preparation. Entire cities were wiped from the map. Worlds like Alderaan suffered catastrophic bombardments. Forests turned to cinder, oceans to steam. But the Republic fought back at Bothawi Jedi, and Republic forces held the line, repelling a major Sith assault. Hope flickered, then flared, and then dimmed again, because through it all, the Emperor himself never appeared. He directed the war through others, his dark counsel, his voices, his invisible hand, his true form remained hidden, untouchable, unseen. And that was by design. No one knew where to strike. No one even knew what he looked like anymore. To his people he was infallible, to his enemies he was unkillable. His myth grew with every battle won, his silence only deepened their fear. And then, just as the Sith stood on the brink of complete victory, something strange happened. They stopped. The Sith launched a bold final attack. Darth Malgus led a strike on Coruscant itself, the capital of the Republic. It was unprecedented. The Jedi Temple was destroyed. The Senate was held hostage. The Republic was brought to its knees. It should have been the end, but instead of delivering the final blow, the Emperor offered peace and armistice. After 28 years of bloodshed, after bringing the Republic to the edge of ruin, he offered a treaty. Both sides were stunned. Why stop now? Why negotiate when victory was so close? No one understood it, not even the Sith, but the Emperor had his reasons. His goal was never to conquer the Republic. He did not want to rule it, he wanted to consume it. And to do that he needed something greater than occupation. He needed fear, he needed suffering, he needed a galaxy teetering on the edge, weak, divided, broken. A long cold war would create more pain, more uncertainty, more fuel for the final ritual than any invasion ever could. And there was something else unknown to the galaxy. The Emperor had already begun living a second life, far away in the unknown. Regions under a new name, Valkorion, a distant world. He had taken a wife, Senya Taral, and fathered 3 children, Arkan, Dexon, and Valen. They were young, fragile, unpredictable, and perhaps they gave him pause. The Treaty of Coruscant was signed soon after it officially ended the Great Galactic War. The Republic gave up dozens of systems. The Jedi were forced to abandon Coruscant and retreat to Tython. Their ancient homeworld, the Sith returned to their territories in triumph. Beneath the ceremony, beneath the ink and signatures, the galaxy remained divided, very divided. Suspicion hardened into policy. Old friends became quiet enemies, and fear sank its claws deep into every world. The Republic was weakened, the Jedi fractured, and the Sith Empire victorious. Yet uneasy Darth Malgus, who had led the final strike, saw the truth clearly. This peace was an illusion, a pause, nothing more, but none dared challenge the Emperors. Will he withdrew even further from public view. No speeches, no appearances, no commands, only silence. The war was over, but the Predator had not left the field. He was merely waiting for the next moment to strike. The Republic had survived, but the dark side was stronger than ever. The cost of peace had been trust, and that loss would echo through the centuries to come. Chapter 8: Cold War and Betrayal. The Emperor who vanished. The Treaty of Coruscant was signed. The war was over, but no one believed the peace would last. Not truly. The galaxy had been carved into halves. Republic and Empire, each watching the other like predators, and the dark spies replaced soldiers, assassins replaced fleets. Every shadow was suspect. It was a cold war, and everyone knew it, but the strangest silence of all came from the Emperor after orchestrating the greatest conflict in living memory. He vanished. Even his own people rarely saw him. Even the Dark Council, powerful though they were, received only rare directives. Never his voice, never his face. Some believed he had entered a deep meditation. Others believed he had become something else entirely, but the truth was far more dangerous. The Emperor was preparing something final, something absolute. He had done it once on Nathema. Now he planned to do it again, not to a planet, to a galaxy. His ultimate ritual would drain all life, every voice, every soul. He would become a god of death, alone in a silent universe. And while the Republic and Sith Empire played their little games, the Emperor was reaching deeper into the dark side than ever before. He began assembling followers. In secret, Sith cultists, loyal servants, but not all of them knew they served him. Some were sleeper agents scattered throughout the galaxy, even hidden within the Jedi Order itself. They were called the Children of the Emperor. Conditioned from birth, linked to him through the Force, most had no idea they were not free. He could whisper through them, spy through them, control them, and when needed, break them. One such child, Kira Kazan, would one day awaken, and with that awakening, cracks would begin to form in the Emperor's invisible web. But first came betrayal from within a Sith Lord on the Dark Council, Darth. Baraz grew ambitious, too ambitious. He hatched a plan to steal the Emperor's throne without ever striking the Emperor himself. Instead, Baraz sought to destroy the Emperor's voice, the host body that carried the Emperor's essence, and replace it with himself. On the surface, it would appear as though nothing had changed, but in truth, Baraz would be ruling everything. He lured the voice to the planet Vos, a world steeped in mystery and ancient Force energies, and there he succeeded. With the help of a dark entity called Selmakar, Baraz imprisoned the Emperor's consciousness. For the first time in over a millennium, the Emperor was truly gone, not dead, but trapped. Word spread quickly through the Empire, and with it doubt. If the Emperor could be silenced, was he ever truly immortal? Was he even alive? The power vacuum trembled. The Dark Council began to whisper, and Baraz declared himself the new voice of the Emperor. He crowned himself with lies, using fear and confusion to gather support. Not everyone believed a Sith warrior secretly loyal to the Emperor exposed Baruz's treachery. The prison on Vos was broken. The Emperor's mind was freed. Baraz was unmasked, and his power collapsed, but the damage was done. The Sith had seen weakness in their god, and weakness to a Sith is unforgivable. In the shadows, the Emperor's final plan moved forward. He selected a remote space station, isolated and secret, as the site of his ultimate ritual. He would replicate what he had done to Nathema, but on a galactic scale. Everything, every star, every voice, every life would be consumed, but the Force whispered warnings. One Jedi heard them, a warrior, a leader, one who would become known as the hero of Tythanthi. Sensed something wrong, something ancient stirring. They did not wait for permission, they acted. They gathered allies, Jedi and Sith Republic, and neutral, and among them stood someone unexpected, Lord Scourge, the Emperor's personal wrath, his executioner. Now his betrayer Scourge had waited centuries for this moment. He joined the Jedi's mission. They infiltrated Draman Kaz. Storms raged over the capital. Inside the citadel, the Emperor's guards fell one by one. And as they reached the throne room, the air changed. He was waiting. Not the man of voice, one of his vessels, but it carried his power. The hero stepped forward, and the Emperor struck. He tried to dominate their mind, just as he had done to Revan, to Malak 2000s before, but this time something held the Jedi. Resisted. A battle erupted, blades and lightning, light and shadow, and at last the voice was destroyed, disintegrated in a blast of radiant energy. The ritual was stopped, the galaxy saved for now. Word of the Emperor's death spread quickly. The Republic rejoiced. The Sith Empire panicked. Some, like Darth Malgus, saw opportunity. He declared the birth of a new empire, free from the old ways, free from the Emperor's shadow. He seized power, seized fleets, declared himself rightful heir. But his rebellion was short-lived. Others within the Empire moved quickly to restore order. They named Empress Achena, a figurehead, a mask to preserve the illusion of control, but none of them knew the truth. The Emperor was not dead, not yet. His essence had fled to a world rich in darkness, Yavin 4 there. In the ruins of ancient temples, he entered a deep slumber, silent, drifting, regenerating. But he was not alone. Across the galaxy, those linked to him, his children, felt his whispers return. They heard his voice, and some went mad. The galaxy believed it was safe. But the dark had only receded, not ended. and in the shadows of Yavin beneath, stone and vine Vitiate stirred again. Chapter 9. Eternal Empire rises. The god behind the curtain, he thought he was gone, defeated, scattered ash. The Jedi claimed victory, the Sith rebuilt their empire, and the galaxy exhaled just a little but on the jungle moon of Yavin 4, where ancient shadows never truly faded. The Emperor began to stir. He was no longer flesh, no longer bound to a body. He was pure will now. A hunger, and he had one goal: to be reborn across the stars. Whispers returned. The children of the Emperor, those bound to him in secret, began hearing his voice again, quiet at first, a presence behind their eyes. He drew strength from them, fed on their fear, fed on their faith. But even that was not enough. He needed a vessel. And this time he would choose differently, not a Sith, not a pawn, something greater. For centuries the Emperor had hidden a secret identity, far from the eyes of the Republic, far even from the Sith. On the world of Zakuul, in the unknown regions, he was not Vitiate, he was not a monster, he was Immortal Emperor of a hidden empire no one had ever heard of. While the Republic and the Sith waged their wars, Zakuul grew in silence. Not with Sith Lords or Jedi Knights, but with something new, an eternal fleet, a technological marvel crafted by a civilization so ancient its name had been lost. Thousands of automated warships, unmanned, unmatched, waiting. Valkorion claimed them, mastered them, and then built his family, a wife, Senya Tyrell, noble and principled, 3 children, Arkan, Dexon, and Valen, each strong in the Force, each shaped by his design. But even gods cannot tame chaos. Valen, the youngest, was born with terrifying power, raw, violent, unstable. So Valkorion bound her mind, locked her behind mental chains, told her it was for her own safety. Dexon, the oldest, was everything Valkorion had hoped for: calm, composed, loyal. Arkan, the middle son, always felt lesser, always compared, and quietly his resentment grew. For years Valkorion raised them in his image. He was a distant father, stern, silent. He gave them purpose, but not affection. And then, as they grew into warriors, he revealed his gift, the eternal throne. From it he controlled not only the fleet, but the fate of Zakuul itself. He offered them a legacy beyond imagination. Called it the Eternal Empire. It would not be Sith, it would not be Jedi, it would be something more unified, efficient, unstoppably. And to prove it, he turned them loose. Arkan and Dexon led the Eternal Fleet into the core worlds. They struck at both the Republic and the Sith with surgical precision. No warning, no politics, just fire and silence. Planet after planet fell. Not through occupation, but through surrender. The galaxy could not fight something it did not understand. Droids with no fear, warships with no crews, a throne controlled by one man. And above it all, Valkorion. He offered peace from a position of absolute power. To the people of Zakuul he was a savior, to the rest of the galaxy he was a myth, and to his children he was a god. They could never please. One day their son returned from battle. In silence he had saved Arkan's life during a brutal conflict, risked everything. But their father offered no praise, no recognition, only expectation. That night, in the eternal throne room, Arkan confronted Dexon. Years of envy boiled over, words became violence. Lightsabers were drawn, and when it ended, Dexon was dead. Killed by his own brother. Valkorion stood there silent, watching. He did not stop it, he did not mourn in Arkan blood. On his hands waited for punishment, but none came. Valkorion said, "Only this now, you are Reggie Arkan," ascended the throne beside his father. But in his heart something cracked. He had killed for love, and received only power in return. Valkorion had won, but he had also lost control. Arkan would rule, but he would never forget the prize. And in the shadows, Valen watched, chains still in her mind, power still in her hands, waiting. Chapter 10. Valkorion's Fall, the End of Forever. The Eternal Empire ruled the galaxy. Its throne was no longer in the core, but on Zakuel, and at its center sat Valkorion, the Immortal Emperor. He had lived a dozen lives, as Tenebrae, the cursed child, as Vitiate, the devourer of worlds, and now as Valkorion, the emperor of machines, of silence, of peace, built on surrender. But even gods grow tired. He had reshaped the galaxy 3 times, crushed empires, bent the Force to his will, and now he wanted a successor, someone worthy, not Archon, not Valen, someone new. A Force-blind outsider, a warrior. He summoned you to Zakuel. You, the hero of Tython, or of Dramond, Kars, or of war. It did not matter who you had once been. He called you Outlander, and he offered you everything: power, immortality, the throne. He spoke, not as a tyrant, but as a father, gentle, calm, persuasive. But beneath that voice was hunger. He wanted your body, your will, your soul. Another vessel, another mask. You refused, and he struck. But not with lightning or blades. He attacked your mind. He broke your body, and when your allies tried to save you, they were too late. He killed you, or so he thought. But Valkorion had made a mistake. For the first time in over 1,000 years, he let his guard down. He allowed a piece of himself to bond with you. A thread of his essence clung to your spirit, and when you returned, he came with you, trapped inside your mind, a shadow that spoke in dreams, a voice behind your eyes, sometimes whispering guidance, sometimes poison, but always watching. Your body lived again, revived in stasis, pulled from death by your allies. And while you fought to rebuild, to resist, to survive, Valkorion whispered. He urged you to take power, to seize the eternal throne, to conquer, to rule. Land slowly, piece by piece, you dismantled his empire. Archon, his fallen son, was defeated. Valen, unchained and unstoppable, was slain. The eternal fleet was brought to Heland. With each victory, Valkorion grew quieter, weaker, until finally only one obstacle remained. Him. You entered the place where he had hidden his final self, deep within your own mind. A palace of illusion, a temple of memory. He stood waiting, dressed in gold and silence. He still called you child, still claimed it was never about death, only evolution. But you saw the truth. Valkorion did not want to transcend. He wanted to survive. He was afraid of the end, afraid of youth. Final battle was not one of blades or armies. It was a war of wills, and yours was stronger with the Force burning through your veins. You shattered the last of him. Every mask, every title, every lie. Tenebrae, Vitiate. Valkorion gone, utterly, finally a god, unmade by the one who refused to kneel. The eternal throne remained, but it was yours now, not his. The galaxy exhaled, and for the first time in centuries, the dark was quiet.